We're going to be looking in a few minutes in Proverbs chapter 31. But I want to talk to everyone here, regardless of your situation, about Mother's Day. You realize that Mother's Day is quite often one of the toughest holidays or celebrations of the entire year, because when it comes to Mama, we get very emotional. We do. They are so very important, and there are some people that just couldn't even bring themselves to be here because they somehow missed out on motherhood, or they had a lot of tragedies such as miscarriages and were never able to raise a child to adulthood. There are some of you that your mom has passed away, and this makes you feel very down today. Well, I want you all to understand that you are not alone by any means. A number of us have lost our moms. Mine has been 6 years, and I still feel the pain from it. Many of you have just had it to happen to you recently. But I want you to know there's not an emotion or feeling that you go through that the Lord Himself does not understand. And He is there for you. Many of you have miscarried a child, and it really causes you anguish. Donna and I did as well. Between our last two children, we lost one. And I do understand the pain. But I want you to know that God is able. And He can lift your spirits and restore those horrible feelings that you've had to joy again if you let Him do it and give Him the time to do it. And besides, most of us know where the ones we lost are, and that we will see them again. And quite frankly, I might add, it will likely be soon. It'll very likely be soon. But you know, God put a lot of emphasis on women. And I might even add more so than men in certain areas. You notice that the penalties for going astray in the Old Testament were far more harsher on women than they were on men. And when I was real young, I was reading that one time, and I thought it was kind of unfair. And so I asked my mother, who was the resident theologian. As a matter of fact, my mother led me to the Lord and taught me much of what I learned about the Bible. I asked her, why is the penalties so tough on a woman in the Bible for committing acts of indiscretion than men? And she said, son, I want you to understand that the mother or the woman is literally the hub of the family. And she said, when Mama goes bad, the family goes bad. Most of y'all know that to be true. You know, and it's very difficult to overcome a childhood where your mom was bad. And it really is. And sometimes many of you were not saved until later in life, and you bear the scars of the damage that maybe you have done as a mother. But I want you to understand that God forgives, that God restores, and every day is a new day with the Lord. So do not kick yourself on your past, because Satan loves to drill that in your head day after day. And for any of you that feel bad about your past, and for those of you that have the devil every day reminding you of your past, why don't you just remind the devil of his future? Amen. And he will leave you alone and go pick on somebody else. But the Bible here in Proverbs 31, this was written by a man by the name of King Lemuel. And he asked the question in verse number 10 of Proverbs 31, who can find a virtuous woman? Wow. That means a morally righteous woman, a woman of integrity, a woman of fidelity, and a woman of morals. I'm here to tell you today that that is a rare commodity indeed, a very rare commodity. Right now, and I'm just going to be honest with you, a lot of children are seeing their moms change men about like the change of socks. And they see that. And they see mom doing a lot of the wrong things in front of the moms. Let me ask you this question. Do you want your daughters to reflect your behavior? If you do not, then you need to change your ways immediately. And let your children see what a virtuous woman is supposed to be. The moms have historically been the moral compass of the family. When I was a kid, one time I went out and my dad was out in the garden, and I just walked up to Daddy and I said, "Daddy, what is sex? What is all that about?" My dad, you couldn't rattle him. He turned around and he said, "Sit down, son, we need to talk." So we sat down under the stark apple tree. I remember that, and it's been like decades and decades ago. And we sat down under the apple tree, and Daddy explained to me in detail all about sex. Because he said he didn't want me hearing it from somebody in school that was misinformed. And after he told me all about it, my mom knew he was doing that. Evidently, she heard it out the window. And so when I come in the house, I told Mom, I said, "Mama, Daddy told me all about sex." And she said, "Now that you know how to do it, don't do it." And so she sat me down and got the Bible out and showed me what the Word of God said about sex and what God's intention for sex is. And so throughout my life, my mother has been, and my dad too, but my mother is much more vocal about stuff, was always a spiritual guide. And mamas, you need to be a spiritual guide for your children. Let them see what a virtuous woman really is, not what you say, but what you do. My mother always lived the Word of God in front of me and my sister. And I will never forget that. Matter of fact, King Lemuel said that her price, or the price of a virtuous woman, is far above rubies, and I might even add diamonds now today, because it is a very rare thing indeed to find a virtuous woman. And if you have a virtuous woman for a mother, you need to thank God for her. Her price is far above rubies. And then here's another mark of the virtuous woman. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he hath no need of spoil. And there's several things that this woman does. First of all, she gives her husband confidence that while he's away, he don't have to worry about what she's doing. And you know, it's a wonderful thing to be able to trust in the woman that you love, guys. Y'all know that. Y'all know that. You know that for a fact. And for your children to trust in her as well. And this verse even kind of adds that you don't even have to worry about the financial situation in your family, because mom is helping to take care of it. Now, a lot of people think that a housewife, and there are a few of them left, sits around all day laying on the sofa watching soap operas and eating bonbons. That could not be further. Y'all tell Anna that. Just if you want to be admitted to the ER with multiple contusions and abrasions, just slide on up there to the nursery and tell Anna that. I've watched what my mother has to do, what she did. I don't have the energy for it. I couldn't have done it. The work that, and this woman that we're going to look at right here in the book of Proverbs, not only raised her children, but she operated a family-run business. And the business that she had was very, very difficult, and it took a lot of her time. I heard a woman say one time that you guys have no idea what a housewife has to put up with. She has to rise before everyone else does in the morning. She has to fix breakfast for the whole household. She has to clean the house from top to bottom. She has to cook all of the meals. Then she has to check all of the children's schoolwork. Then she has to cook another meal. Then she has to do this and she has to do that. And then be in the mood when her husband gets home. That's tough. But I'm being real now. I ain't lying to y'all. That's true. A lot of women have had to deal with that. And so a woman's job is much tougher than the man's. It really is. Even though he might be on public works and he might be digging a ditch all day long, you got to look at what mom has had to do. And then there are a lot of ladies today that have to work a regular job and then come home and take care of everything. The mere fact of taking care of toddlers is enough for me. Every time I go up there and look in that nursery, I get suicidal after about 5 minutes of watching that. I raised 5 kids, and Donna and I we split a lot of the duties and stuff like that, but that was when I was in my 20s and 30s, and I had energy then, but just watching that now makes me want to go lay down. So my hat goes off to you ladies and the energy that you have. And it said her husband trusts in her, and that is the mark of a virtuous woman. What a wonderful thing. Said she will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. I am so thrilled to be married to Donna Cash. Let me tell you, I finally found a woman that would be willing to wake up beside me for 36 years and either not kill me or run screaming into the woods in the night, never to be seen again. And believe me, I've given her reason to do either one. But there she is every day. Toughest woman, I mean that toughest woman I've ever seen in my life. And she has done me good all the days of my life. Oh, we have disagreements every once in a while, and it all works out when I say I'm sorry. All right. Here's the family business. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ship. She brings her food from afar. What that means is she is concerned with the welfare of her family. A lot of people say that they go to the church closest to them. And I heard a pastor say, well, would you go to the closest grocery store if they were selling poison food, or would you be willing to drive across town to get the right kind of food for your family? And they said, well, I'd ride all the way across town. They said, well, you need to not worry about what's the closest church, but what church preaches and teaches the Word of God. And this woman right here understood that. She was not one of convenience. She brought her food from afar. And this is one thing that is so true about the virtuous woman. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household and a portion to her maidens. My grandmother used to get up at 4 o'clock every morning because they had a wood stove in the house and 9 children. And she had to have breakfast ready for all of them by the time it was like 6 o'clock, so they could eat and head outside to go work in the fields for the rest of the day. And so a woman doesn't get to go to bed early and get up late like a lot of guys do. They have a lot to deal with. And lack of sleep is a hallmark, quite often, of the virtuous woman. I didn't design it that way. That's just the way it happens. But here's a woman that is more concerned for her family than she is for her own well-being. And I was raised by a woman like that. And I've watched this woman right here with our 5. And that's the way she has always been. So am I spoiled? Yeah, probably. But I thank God for that. I got to see the real deal right here. Here again it says she considers a field and buys it, and with the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. Here is an independent woman that is doing the work that she has been given to do by God, and she's not relying on help from here and help from there. She gets out there and she does it. And it doesn't look like that her husband's sticking his nose in the family business. Evidently, he can't run it like she can. And there are things that we can do that the women can't do, things that the women can do that we can't do. That's how a partnership works. And here she is running a family business. She is growing things. She's planting a vineyard. And it said she girds her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. And she perceives that her merchandise is good. Not only does she take pride in taking care of her family, but she takes pride in what she does with the family business. And it said her candle goeth not out by night. I just remember all the old school stuff about my mother. Now I know people don't do this anymore, but when my mother would fix supper, she would serve us all at the table, and she would stand back behind my dad and make sure we had everything at the table. And sometimes she'd sit down and sometimes she wouldn't. Now, we changed that tradition in my house. But I would go, aren't you going to eat anything? And she said, well, I ate while I was cooking. That's really, really old school. But I remember that fateful day that my dad looked at her and he said, he called her Gertie. He said, Gertie, you haven't been fixing enough snaps and potatoes lately. I saw the color go out of her face when he turned his head, and her lips formed the words, I'll fix him. And so twice a day, for 2 solid weeks, we had snaps and potatoes. And my dad sat there and ate them every single time and thanked her. And I would speak up, or my sister would speak up and go, Mama, why are you and she'd go, shut up. And so we had to endure green beans and potatoes twice a day for 2 weeks. And so finally at the end, my mother looked at him and she said, all right, I give up. And he said, give up what? And he never got it. So that's a little aside from what went on in the house. Fixing him didn't work. He thought she was doing him a favor. Lord have mercy. And it said that her candle does not go out by night. She is a dedicated mom. And there's never a schedule for all of you ladies with newborn babies that have to get up and feed them all night long. Praise God for y'all. That is real. It's getting up in the middle of the night is one of the most disruptive things that you could possibly imagine, but it's worth it for your baby, and moms think so as well. And I'm grateful when they have that kind of dedication. It said she lays her hands to the spindle and her hands hold the distaff. She's making cloth for the family. She's running a business for the family. Her sleep evades her. And not only does she do that, but she has time for people on the outside of the family that are poor. In other words, the virtuous woman is not only tough, but she has a big heart. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reaches out her hands to the needy. And she is not afraid of the snow for her household. I used to get so fretted when a bad storm was on the way, and Donna would go and run water in both of the bathtubs and fill it up. And I'd go, what are you doing that for? Well, you never know. If the storm hits and we don't have power, you're going to need, I said, oh, it's ridiculous. Stop doing that. And then a big storm came and wiped out electricity for a couple of days, and I had to eat crow because we had to dip the buckets and the water out of the tub so we could flush the toilets. And she said, I told you so. So they are prepared, and she's not afraid of bad weather. And it said all of her household are clothed with scarlet. That is an indication of the finest of clothing. She always gave her best for the family. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry, or clothing of silk and purple. Not only did she make the clothes, but she gave them, like I said, the very finest that she could. Now, this is another really great verse. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. What that's talking about under ancient Hebrew tradition was when you came into a city, of course the cities were gated by necessity. And when you opened the gates to go into the city, all of the key people of the city, the elders, the people that ruled, the people that had the highest respect were right there in the gate. That's who you would meet when you would come into the city, were the elders of the city. And the reason why the virtuous woman's husband was known in the gates, it literally means he was notable, they respected him highly, was because he was married to a good woman. That's true. Oh, come on guys, don't y'all ain't making eye contact at me. A woman can make you or break you. You know I mean that. You know what I mean. You know exactly what I'm saying. They can. And let me say this to you men. Marry well. Marry a godly woman. Now, it's getting quiet in here. I better shut up because I ain't going to have nobody back me up in the parking lot here in a few minutes. He is known by the elders because of the woman that's with him and helping him. She maketh fine linen and sells it, and delivers girdles unto the merchant, and strength and honor are her clothing. That is more important than being dressed in the finest silks and satins and pearls and diamonds and lace and all of that other stuff. The greatest clothing that a woman can wear is strength and honor. And she shall rejoice in time to come. Moms, what he's saying, what King Lemuel is telling you right here, is a lot of you think that nobody appreciates what you do. And you may not hear it very often, but you will rejoice in time to come, because God himself is going to reward you for being a virtuous woman. Yes, he will. He will reward you for being a virtuous woman. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. That's in her. Not so much in me. I have a hit list in here of some people I'd like to get. And Donna thinks you just need a puppy and you'll be all right. Thank God she keeps me out of the penitentiary by telling me, don't do that, honey. That's not very smart. And I'm Irish. You don't need lying about it. I'll fly off the handle. Y'all don't get to hear it. She does. And she'll calm me down. She sees the good in everybody. And let me just simply say this about Donna. If Donna says that you ain't no good, you might as well go on and check into hell and get started with your sentence. Because I've only heard her say that about maybe 2 people in our entire 36 years, and ain't none of them in here. She finds the good in everybody. Thank God she balances me out. And in her tongue is the law of kindness, and that is the mark of a virtuous woman. She looks well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. I have to tell her, Donna, you don't have to do that. The children are all grown. The youngest one is 31 years old. And she said, they're still my children. and in truth they always will be, no matter how old they get. The very first thing she does, if she sees the police going up the road, is she calls the kids to make sure it ain't for them. Not that they've done anything illegal, but that they were in an accident. Let me clear that up. I used to get calls about Andy all the time. They go, well, we have your son here. You know, and he'd have to agree if he was here. But he never went to jail or nothing like that. He was just doing stupid things like I did, only it's illegal now. Okay. But Donna has always looked well to the ways of her household, and she's never eaten the bread of idleness. My mother did not, my grandmother did not. And what a godly example of these women that we see here. A woman, a virtuous woman, is always looking out for her household. Her children arise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. I think a woman who is virtuous ought to be praised. She ought to be thanked. And men, let me just lay it out for y'all here right now. If you got a godly woman by your side, you ought to get down on your knees and thank God every night and pull her foot over to you and kiss the top of that foot and praise her for being the kind of woman she is, because that's rare. That's right. Not too many men can say that. You've got that kind of a woman. You need to thank God for her. You need to hang on for her for dear life and don't let her out of your sight, because it's a rare, rare thing. Many daughters have done virtuously, but this virtuous woman excels them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. I think of that picture that they got of a big, stout, Russian-looking woman with a bonnet on her head. Really grave looking. And it said, cute is out. Now men are looking for a woman that can catch a chicken. I'm not going to go that far yet. I still like a woman to be presentable. But I'm telling you, beauty is vain. It's vain.